Welcome to the University of Phoenix Educational Equity webinar series. We thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Promoting Equity, Redefining Roles, and Recognizing Undervalued Efforts. My name is Tandra Richardson, Director in the Office of Educational Equity. I have the honor and privilege of co-hosting this monthly series with my colleague, Saray Lopez, fellow director in this office. The Educational Equity webinar series was designed to foster a learning environment where we may explore paths to empower individual action for greater unity and societal transformation. These conversations are a priority at University of Phoenix because we serve working adults across all industries, in which 56% of these students identify as members of historically underrepresented communities. Hence, throughout these webinars, we facilitate thought-provoking conversations to promote the practice of inclusive leadership in today's culturally complex society. Saray?
Hello, everyone. It's so great to see all of you joining us. And before we get started, we would like to begin by acknowledging the original inhabitants of all the lands on which we are standing. While we meet virtually, I do invite you to join me to honor and give gratitude to the Indigenous peoples who were the original custodians of the various lands we each call home. We do recognize that a land acknowledgement alone is insufficient, yet it serves as a starting point as we continue our individual journeys towards racial equity. So here in the Phoenix metropolitan area, we inhabit the Hohokam, Akimel-O'odham, Pipash, and Yavapai lands. Thank you for joining us and taking time to honor the original custodians of the lands in which we stand. And if you're not aware of who were the original custodians of the lands and where you live, I highly encourage you to look them up. You can easily Google them, and we'll pop in the chat a link where you can find out. Thank you. And being March, these are the cultural awareness dates, being Women's History Month. Such an honor to be here today with such incredible women on the stage today. And just take a moment to look up the importance of each of these dates. And if there's a date missing, add it in the chat, share a link with the resource so we can all go and learn more about it. With that, I'll hand it over to Tandra.
Thank you, Saray. Okay, so now let's set the stage for today's discussion. Listed here are guidelines we believe essential to fostering respectful conversations. We value your participation in potentially uncomfortable discussions, as this reinforces our willingness to learn and grow. We encourage you to share your experiences and perspective in the chat box. We ask all participants to contribute to an atmosphere of mutual respect and sensitivity. In addition, we highly encourage you to connect with one another, share your LinkedIn profile, and helpful resources related to today's topic. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Questions will be answered as time permits throughout the hour. However, the majority of our questions will be answered during a Q&A as we close out today. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Saray so she can introduce you to our moderator and our great lineup of panelists.
It's such an honor to introduce Erica. She's one of our regulars. I'm sure many of you recognize her from previous webinars, but most importantly, the Inclusive Leadership Summit, where she hosted the Workforce Diversity Seminar. We're so excited to have her back, and along with with Talona and Jenna Beckett, who are incredible women joining this stage. But without further ado, let me introduce Erica to all of you who have not met her yet. You have the honor of meeting her today. Erica Stroman is a senior account specialist at Workforce Solutions here at University of Phoenix. And she's also a chair of the Community Engagement and Partnership within the President's Advisory Council for the Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity and Belonging President's Advisory Council here at University of Phoenix. That is really long. I'll rephrase that in a little bit, but had the honor of collaborating with Erica in all these capacities, and she's just absolutely incredible. Erica works with organizations to amplify the development of their most valuable assets, people. She serves as a trusted advisor to both leaders and individual contributors to guide, strengthen, and elevate their leadership and professional vision to new heights. With over 13 years of career development experience in roles such as Director of Career Services and Campus Executive Director, she has a passion for building relationships and an appetite for helping others maximize their full potential. Erica knows how to connect with a crowd and provide thought-provoking ideas that help others to drive their own career and personal goals. And have we had the honor of witnessing all of this and benefiting and learning from it. So with that, without further ado, it's just such an honor to welcome you here, Erica, to welcome you, Talona Johnson and Jenna Beckett, joining us on this incredible conversation on Women's History Month today.
Well, greetings, greetings. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation. And I'm so excited to do that with two amazing women. I'd love for you to get to know them first. Before we even dive into this, I want you to know who they are, right? So, Jenna, just tell us a little bit let them know a little bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Jenna Beckett. I am originally from Atlanta, Georgia, relocated to the Midwest now. I am a full stack web developer. I work in open source code environment at the moment. I also have a background in technical education and helping folks enter the technology sector as a career. And finally, I do a lot of work with women in technology, both through just grassroots organizations and volunteering for working with younger folks, getting them into technology and having that kind of developer mindset early in life.
All right, let's get into technology. I love it. We can't go without introducing Talona. Talona, tell them a little bit about you today.
Hello, my name's Talona Johnson, and I'm originally from Little Rock, Arkansas. I am a Michigan State Spartan. I think they're playing in the Sweet 16 right now, so go green. I currently work for General Motors. I've been with the company for over 30 years, and I've had the privilege of designing, building, and selling the world's best cars.
Amazing. The reason why I have brought these two amazing ladies together is because they are both within industries that are mostly dominated by males. Also, they're in industries where there may not be as much representation. And so as we walk into today's discussion, I believe that there's a lot to be said for the topic. We are going to talk about and shine a light today on unseen efforts, both within and beyond the workplace. And I'm talking about those things that you think about and you're less like, wait, I don't get a break from that. There's no holiday bonuses, there's no sick time, there's no promotion, there's no compensatory, like that time off. What remains hidden in the shadows of our daily life is just a sheer multitude of unnoticed and unregulated or even unvalued tasks. And I'm pretty sure some of you on the call can maybe relate to them because they happen before we even step into our workplaces. Maybe it's around preparing meals. I don't know about y'all, but that's a big task. It could be arranging childcare pickups. It's around sensing something's up with your child and saying, I got to have a conversation about that because that got to sit in the back of my mind. It could actually be folding the clothes, birthday gifts, the actual making of the food that you actually bring in, right? It could be thinking about when was my last doctor's visit? When was my kids? All of those things that kind of permeate within our mind. And then we go into our workplaces. And there you may see undervalued, maybe even unnoticed, or better yet, it could also be unregulated that work as well. Sometimes it looks like navigating office politics. It could look like soothing a coworker's conflicts. It could like managing emotional labor. There's so many things. And so today we're going to talk about that. We want to recognize and bring value to those spaces. So if we can go to the next slide, I love to kind of just get our speakers engaged in this because that invisible labor extends beyond the home. And I love to start off by just asking our first question. That would be to Talana. What are some examples of invisible labor you've observed in your career, in the career of others, and what impacts have you noticed because of this labor?
Some examples that I have experienced firsthand could be as simple as taking minutes at meetings, making sure that everyone knows what's going on. I've also seen it in our fundraising efforts, celebrations, party planning, all of that non-core work. Kind of when you go to the refrigerator and it doesn't smell just right, you know, they'll leave it there for you to get it.
Oh, that is so true. I love to see, just in the chat, can you relate to any of the things that are mentioned here today? Just some of those examples of invisible labor. And of course, Jenna, any insights? How have you seen it? And what impacts have you noticed from it, if you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of undervalued efforts or somewhat invisible efforts in creating culture. Culture is there whether we try to create it or not. And if we don't try to create it, then oftentimes what is generated just by us all being in the same space, whether virtually or in person, can sometimes leave a lot of wanting, right? A lot of gaps in the culture. So a lot of times you see folks who step up and try and do things to bring teams together. And those efforts aren't valued because they're not tied directly to financial outcomes.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And it's funny that you mentioned that. I have another question, because when we think about the word invisible labor, and most people may have not heard it before. You can put in the chat if you've heard this word or described in this way, but it actually is over 3 decades old. It was actually created in 1987, and so it really is that work that they're referring to here. And so I'll start off with this, Jenna, from your perspective. What are some ways, because it's been around for 30 years, so what are some innovative ways that companies can promote equity and recognition for undervalued labor, particularly among like diverse teams and stakeholders? What are some ways that you've seen that?
Yeah, I would say that making culture building an official capacity at your organization, and this doesn't necessarily mean that you are going out and you are hiring someone to do that role. And it definitely doesn't mean that folks in the HR department should be exclusively responsible for this, because unfortunately, no matter the best intentions, that's often viewed as like a culture mandate instead of one that happens organically. So instead, organizations can create things like a culture club or a culture committee, and have folks volunteer to participate in these efforts. To do this, though, we know that the folks who tend to volunteer for these types of activities tend to be women. So if you are looking to have a group of individuals in your culture club or committee that is diverse and representative of your entire workforce, then I would say you also need to add an element of making the group highly visible. So this means that you are recognizing the individuals who are participating in this, and doing it very publicly and doing it very regularly, so that when it comes time to volunteer, maybe for the second cycle of the club, you have a line of people wanting to join, right? And I think the most important part is ensuring that you are communicating to leaders across all levels of an organization that if you have a teammate that is participating in something like a culture club or culture committee, their efforts should be recognized when it comes time for review cycles, when it comes time to talk about group wins. Again, just everything you can do to make the group very highly visible, that the efforts are very well recognized and supported, and make it attractive for folks who may not traditionally have joined, want to get in on the action and contribute.
Wow, that's really insightful. Luana, anything to add to that?
I think that it's good to find a sponsor, someone who cares about whatever the issue is, and bring them along, because he or she can often find volunteers, folks who want to, they want some face time with the boss, and they may come along. but also have succession in mind. Yeah, I'll do it this time. Who's going to do it next time? In your group meetings, team meetings, you have to be intentional about it.
So good. In fact, it makes me even think of for Talana, for you. So how can individuals effectively manage and navigate around this in their professional careers? Because to your point, some of it is like the thing that people don't see. So what comes to mind? How can people navigate that as they think about their careers?
I don't think that all assignments in that invisible space are non-value added, because there are opportunities for you to see your leaders and to interact with them depending on whatever that cause is, especially if it's something that they're passionate about. But don't get caught in the trap where you don't have a way out. So, again, I'll do it this time, but I'm looking for somebody, to succeed, to take my place next time. And I think, again, just being intentional with your leadership, setting expectations and making sure that everybody is in agreement, quote unquote, to what the plan is.
Yeah, there you go. And thank you for sharing that language. I think that language is so simple that sometimes we're like, oh, what should I say? I notice I'm the one that's doing this. What do I say though? So thanks for sharing that language that folks might be able to use in order to really think through how to make sure they're managing it. Jenna, for you as a full stack web developer, I'm pretty sure you navigate this invisible as well as visible task in your role. Can you share what it looks like to balance these responsibilities and how you advocate for recognition within your industry, within the tech industry?
Sure. So developers as a community, we have a reputation of being shy and reserved. As someone who is energetic and outgoing, early in my career, I was looked at like a little bit of a unicorn. In fact, I routinely got the comment, "You don't really seem like a developer." And in multiple organizations, this led me to finding myself not being in a leadership role, but having a primary stake in group morale. And when it came time to complete review cycles, I included information about any of my efforts and made sure that I related them to metrics. And I think that's the most important part. Another element of invisible labor that I think can be prevalent in the tech industry specifically is community development. And that is relatable if you're working in like the world of open source software, where it is, just the tech community at large coming together and contributing to a code base. I see that in companies that want to create some kind of culture, but don't necessarily have the budget per se to hire a community manager, that the folks who tend to tackle this extra work disproportionately are women. And when you're going through and you're ensuring that the efforts that you're doing can help you in career progression, and you can advocate for the work that you're doing, you want to directly map those back to company goals and OKRs. And this is a great way for you to say, hey, this labor that I'm doing, it is taking a part of my time, but it is still valuable. And sometimes the direct correlation to a company goal or to an OKR is not direct. You kind of have to think about it creatively often. But it is definitely something that if you're very aware of what the company's goals are, and you can think about how your efforts of community building or team morale map back specifically to those efforts, I think that's a great way of making the invisible visible.
I love that because it is about value, right? It's the value that we see in the tasks of the things that we do too. And that makes me even think about, how do you advocate for the fair distribution of both visible and invisible tasks within your team? I think, Talana, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. How do you advocate for that? How do you advocate for the fair distribution of both types of labor, visible and invisible within your team?
I'd like to give assignments. Sometimes you have to manage up and make it known, whatever those observations may be, or whatever you're feeling, what you're seeing in the team, making sure that the leadership understands, and then make suggestions, give assignments. You can give assignments to your boss or even your teammates. But I think when it's out in the open, not something that we only talk about, with other folks that may be struggling with the same issues, it makes it a lot easier to address. And once you have a sponsor or someone to help you along the way, I think that distributing the work becomes a little bit easier.
Absolutely. One thing that I love to share is just in regards to what each of us can do each day, is something that just comes to mind when we think about, hey, maybe someone else hasn't acknowledged, but maybe I can. Maybe I can acknowledge that in the public space. Most organizations, I know here at the University of Phoenix, we have different places in which we can go in and give acknowledgement to someone in a way that's public, because maybe it's something that no one really thought about as work, but I saw it and I recognized it and I'm going to acknowledge it today. And that's one way that we can do it as well. In fact, it makes me just think of, in the chat, drop one way that you can acknowledge someone's work. What is some work that you see getting done? You didn't do it, but someone did it. What are some ways you can acknowledge that? I'd love to see your comments, your thoughts in the chat on that. And in fact, I'd love to get any finishing thoughts on just how we can recognize and value labor within the workforce. Anything in the chat that needs to be mentioned, Tandra? If not, I'll keep going.
We have quite a few really good comments. There's a lot of affirming some of the things that you all are stating. There's some similar statements just made in a few different ways, but we'll come on camera if any comments or additional questions come in. I'll let you know.
Oh, perfect. Well, let's keep going. So now that we've talked about really thinking through how do we value, how do we recognize, and how do we value, we got to come up with some strategies. The concept of mental load, right? Y'all know what mental load, the way that I kind of think of it is like where employees are bearing a burden of like additional responsibilities. Sometimes at the end of the job description, it says other tasks other tasks as provided or other tasks as given. And so it's really thinking about how can we make sure that those things are balanced out? How can we make sure that that we're not adding on more when we think about what is happening inside somebody before they even show up to work? So I want to kind of start us off with some questions in this space. Let's go into it. So I'll start off. I'll ask the first question to Jenna. In your experience, what are some common challenges or barriers to achieving equitable distribution of workload, and how can those challenges be addressed?
Yeah, I think one challenge is when leadership doesn't look at the whole human, or better yet, doesn't take the time to understand a team member on a human level, like beyond the walls of the organization that you work in. When this happens, it is really easy for workload to become unbalanced and creates this breeding ground for burnout. For example, let's say you have someone who is a high performer. For the past 3 quarters, they have exceeded all of your expectations. However, this quarter, they are just meeting requirements. Leadership who, just start saying, well, why are you slacking off? And directly going to that assumption. I think this is a really good way to lose top performers. Instead, an approach of, ensuring that you're asking like, what's going on in your life right now before you hit the door of coming into work, right? Let me understand that. And understanding, in these previous quarters when they were just exceeding all expectations, were they putting in extra hours outside of just the base requirements, and that wasn't being recognized? And I think one thing here that I think is especially important, especially when you're dealing with high performers, is that if they come in quarter 1 and they just blow all expectations out of the water, and then quarter 2, they're just meeting the expectations, that's still good performance. Penalizing someone for going above and beyond in the past, I think, is one way that we cause an inequity in workload distribution.
Oh, wow. What great observations. Talana, anything to add?
I think we really have to advocate for ourselves. Sometimes it's easy because we don't want the boss to think, we're not doing our job, or for fear of a bad review. But I think we have to, know our job, be able to communicate when we're having challenges or when that load is just too much and advocate for ourselves. It's challenging, but we have to be bold, because if we're not, who will?
There we go. Such a good observation. I can think back to times when I first started working. I'm the first in my family to get a college degree in a lot of ways. And I thought, oh, I can't say anything. I'm just grateful to be here. I'm just grateful to be here. And in those times when we think about that, we can get so much on our workload that is unrealistic, but then we are afraid to speak out. And so I'm hoping that for those that may be in the room that may be experiencing that, listen, I hope you're hearing that you can advocate for yourself and it's okay. In fact, I'll go ahead and ask the other question to Talonda. How can organizations encourage open communication and transparency around workload allocations to ensure that all employees feel valued and supported in their roles? What thoughts do you have there?
I think it starts with really setting expectations, because if my leader is expecting something different than I'm prepared to deliver, I'm not going to meet that expectation. So just level setting, making sure that you're aligned with your manager, and then doing the work. Sometimes we're going to miss, but we can't be afraid to fail, because when you stop failing, then you're not trying, is how it can appear. And that comes with culture. So hopefully, managers are setting up that kind of culture where they want, innovation, transformation, but with that comes sometimes failure, but it says that you're trying. So really get in line with your manager is where I would start.
So good. So good. Anything you'd like to add, Jen, on just open communication and how we can ensure that that's there?
Yeah, in the world of software development, you have different methodologies for working. One such methodology is called the Agile methodology, and it's often paired with a project management approach called Scrum. These two techniques together to produce software come with certain ceremonies. These are just meetings that happen on a regular basis. And one meeting that I find to be beneficial, whether you're building software or not, is called a daily stand-up. And it doesn't have to be daily in the world of software development. It often is, but the purpose of this meeting is to be extremely short and have each person say, this is what I worked on yesterday. This is what I'm working on today. And these are the roadblocks that I have. Even that simple meeting, it can be 15 minutes depending on team size, right? Everybody just takes 30 seconds. Bringing visibility into what everyone is doing and creating this shared knowledge of how workload is distributed, I think is a very valuable practice.
Thank you for sharing that. In fact, I want to just kind of ask you another question while we're on you. How can individuals advocate for themselves and ensure that their contributions are recognized, especially when it comes to that, right? So to your point, you have these stand-up meetings. How can individuals advocate for themselves in that way?
Yeah, I think the first step to doing that is understanding the parameters that you're working within. So that means gaining a deep understanding of your organization's goals, both long and short term, and how that impacts your department or your team specifically. From there, when you're looking at your efforts and the work that you do every day, mapping your efforts to metrics that impact these goals. Again, the only way that we can make this invisible labor visible is by having some way of tracking it, right? And again, you have to sometimes get creative in how you relate efforts, especially when you're dealing with things like community and culture building, how you map those back to organizations' goals and design metrics around them. It really impacts the way you talk about yourself, especially in review cycles. I know that executive leadership teams speak fluent metrics, so the more that you can put out there, the better. And track these over time. So like if you're someone who regularly organizes group social events, track engagement and also track turnover for your team. So before we did these, turnover rate was 30%. Now it's only 15. These may not have that direct sales correlation, but it does definitely impact your organization's ability to deliver. And so tying those efforts back to, the numbers, tangible numbers that somebody can put their hands on, I think is a very valuable practice and great way to advocate for yourself.
Wow, that was really good. Good feedback and good thoughts. I hope that that helps someone. Talana, from your perspective, anything to add that individuals can use to advocate for themselves? Anything to add there?
I like what she said about making sure that your manager, your leader is knowing what you're working on, because they're not hopefully following you around, trying to keep up. So sending them a note at the end of the week, hey, this is what I accomplished this week. This is my plan for next week. And like she said, these are the roadblocks. I think that communication is the critical part. I was meeting with my boss. He sits in a lot of meetings with me. So I don't feel, the need to have a weekly one-on-one, because we're always constantly communicating. So depending on how, your work environment is, you may not need a lot of one-on-one, but just making sure that they know what you're working on, how you're contributing, and how you're making a difference. And don't forget the extra stuff.
Yes, don't forget the extra stuff. As a leader, Solana, I'll just go back because I think that you brought up a good point. As a leader, are there any best practices or innovative approaches you've seen or implemented when it comes to shouldering disappropriate amounts of work? Have you seen anything that might add value here?
I wouldn't say that it's real innovative, but bringing along some of those who might not always seem like they're, doing the most. And it's also a good way. I had male counterparts that I would ask, do you want to come along? I got to go and I have to do a task, but, there's something there for you as well. So it doesn't have to be always underrepresented, but sometimes we can take our male counterparts with us, and actually, they may enjoy the experience and want to do it themselves next time. So just bringing others along with you.
That's so good. That's so good. I have to be honest, when I look at strong leadership, I always kind of say, I want to go where they're going. I'm going to see, I like to be a part. I try to get in line with them so that I can figure out how I can best support, because I'm going to learn and grow there in regards to my own career. So I'm hoping someone can take something from that, because there's so much value in nuggets that you just mentioned. In fact, I think the other part about this is the communication. So what I'm gathering is the strategy for equitable distribution of workload is all about communication. So let's go there. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what that actually looks like. Of course, in any organization, communication is important in order to be able to cultivate collaboration. It's such an important concept of most organizations, and in fact is needed within our homes and every place else too. And so let's talk about it. Let's talk about how we foster open communication. So I'll start off with you, Jenna. How can organizations create a culture of, just from your opinion, of course, how can organizations create a culture of psychological safety where employees feel comfortable expressing their thoughts and ideas and concerns, without that fear of judgment or reprisal? Any thoughts
Yeah.
there?
So I would say, first and foremost, you need to participate in transparent communication. Communicate both the good and the bad. And when you communicate the bad, don't make excuses, and don't try and direct blame. Instead, talk about it from the point of view of what you learned. If you celebrate both your wins and your failures, then you're really creating a culture of innovation. And you do that by alleviating the fear of failure among your team. Additionally, I think that being extremely clear on organizational goals and ensuring that at all levels of leadership, they are able to communicate to their team members how each person's role directly impact those organizational goals. As an individual contributor, I myself am much more motivated to achieve and able to communicate some innovative ideas or ways I have to make things more efficient when I know how my contributions are affecting that big picture. Finally, I would say that another thing to really create that culture of psychological safety is finding some truly anonymous ways for your team to communicate with leadership. One great example that I see at my current organization, Cypress, is during our company touch points, we use a software called Slido to submit questions to the leadership who is presenting in the meeting. This software actually allows you to post questions with your name or to post them anonymously. And the most important part of that is that I, as an individual member going in and submitting a question, I don't have to log in. So that gives me assurances that it is truly anonymous.
Wow. Anything to add there, Talana, in regards to just how to create a culture of psychological safety, especially as a leader? Any thoughts there?
I think as leaders get to know their team, it's not always just about the work, but get to know me as a person so that, if I raise my voice, maybe I'm not angry, but I'm just being passionate. Or if I have to run out, in the middle of the day that I have kids to take care of, whatever is going on, because when you build relationships with people, you give them grace when they need it, but also it allows you to put things in perspective.
So good, so good. That is so good. I think back around when we think about open communication and we think about the psychological safety that we are looking to create. I love to see in the chat anything that you've come up with, anything that you've seen that have made you feel safe. Maybe someone in the chat could use some thoughts that you have to share. But as you're typing in the chat, I'll go ahead and open up another question for Talana. How can employees, from your opinion, ensure that their voices are heard and considered in decision making? Because that is huge, especially in decision-making processes when it comes to open communication. Any thoughts there to help to make sure that communication is actually utilized or makes people feel seen?
Again, it's about the relationship and building trust, because if your team trusts you and they know, what you say comes with the right spirit, you can get a lot farther when things are not so great, or whatever situation you're facing is challenging. Them being able to hear you beyond the passion is often the most critical part of moving beyond, and for you to feel safe. I'm not scared to raise my hand when I know that, hey, this isn't right, we have a problem, and getting my leadership to help me address it. We have channels of communication, but they don't always work, or you have issues that may have to bypass them because it's critical. So really having a relationship where you can be trusted, and people, will listen when you say, this isn't right, this doesn't feel right, and be able to help give you support to move past that, whether it be a personal issue, a work issue, or, a corporate issue.
For sure. Any examples that you can share? I think it is so important to be able to give it a narrative, but really when we think about examples, that may help to kind of make it more real for folks here. So any examples, Talana, I'll start with you. Any examples that you can share around open communication and collaboration and how you've seen them contribute to like innovation or problem solving or even organizational success throughout your time?
Oh, you're gonna make me tell all my secrets.
Just one or two,
Hopefully,
just one or two.
hopefully you can still hear me. Well, I have a team of people that I work with, and once a week, we have very similar jobs, but we find time, as busy as we are, to get together and to talk about issues, concerns, to share information. But sometimes we just vent, this is what's going on, in my space. What can I do? Well, this person could probably help you with that. And it's a safe space where we don't have to be concerned about things leaving the room unless they're supposed to, but being able to support each other. So finding that support system, it can be people that you work with or people who you don't directly work with, but having a team of folks that you can go to and, get it off and move on, I think is important.
That's so good. That's so good. See, it wasn't that bad. You shared a secret though, but it wasn't that bad. Jenna, anything to add? Any examples of how open communication and collaboration, how you've seen it contribute to like problem solving and of such?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my current role, I actually work to manage a community for users of our software. And this community management is a new role for me, something that I stepped into only in this organization. So it was something that I was going and learning as I went. But we also have a different community serving a different purpose at the same organization. So much like Talona is talking about, I went to the person who manages that community. Him and I meet regularly. We share ideas. We try and share the burden of content creation and making sure that our communities are well informed. We just really have made this informal work group where him and I can connect, we can create together, we can come up with innovative ideas, and we can also share like the frustrations and the the roadblocks that we hit. We can vent with each other. Like those types of informal cross collaborative work groups, I think is a great way for improving open communication and leveraging it to solve problems out in a way that's out of the box.
That is so good. You know, one thing, and I'm not sure if my leader is here right now, but one thing that I just really enjoy being able to do is to simply ping her and be like, I got an idea. Can I share it? I often do this. I usually am like, listen, I'm going to go left field, bring me back in, but I got to get this idea out. And sometimes she's like, that's really good, Erica. Let's implement it. So even just the idea of being able to come, you know, whether that has to be scheduled, but to come, to have an opportunity to come, not, you know, just openly and knowing that that door is open can really make a difference as well when we're talking about open communication and collaboration. Just something to share here, but definitely wanted to make sure I noted that as well within the conversation. All right. So with that, let's keep it going. Anything that we should address, I'm happy to do it. I think that is our question, but we'll keep going. Let's go. So when it's all said and done, we do have to think about how this invisible work, how it shows up. How can we maybe challenge this? How can we challenge traditional gender norms and biases within the workplace? Because it's important for promoting diversity within our workplaces. And so let's talk about it, right? Any examples? I'll start with you, Jenna. Any examples of how you've seen successful diversity initiatives or programs that you've seen implemented that contribute, that have brought in those voices, allowed for the communication, and now we've gotten something that is helpful to the workplace. Anything to add there?
Yeah. So one example that I've seen, like out in the wild, I've never worked for this organization, that comes to mind is Disney. Their ERG program, they not only hold these individual ERGs, they not only hold internal events, but they also conduct external events as well. The group members go and attend and speak at events that are related to their communities. They encourage attendees to reach out to them about hiring questions or to gain insights about working at Disney. And in this way, this group not only provides a community space and psychological safety for folks that already work within the organization, but they are also actively working to increase the diversity of the employee population at their org. I would say their key factor to success is that they are not treated as nice to haves. They are treated as essential parts of business. They are given budgets. They have leadership structures. It is really something that the organization as a whole views as essential operations.
So good. So good. Anything you like to add, Talana? I know there are so many ways we've probably seen this before. Just want to see if you have anything to add there.
No, I totally agree with you that ERGs, employee resource groups, are essential not only for the companies that we work for, but also for the employees, because it provides a safe space where like-minded people can get together, share ideas, or whatever it is. Maybe it's happy hour. I'm a part of GMAN, General Motors African Ancestry Network, and I have been a part of the professional development group for quite a few years now, just, doing programming to help people gain new skills. But we also like to have fun. So, we may have a First Friday here and there, because getting to know people in work and outside of work is important. to know the folks that you work with, because then you know who to call when you have an issue or you're having a challenge. GM Women is another one. It's probably the largest ERG within our organization, and they have a lot of power collectively because they like to do things not only with, the different functions, but as a group as a whole. So I think that they create value not only for the participants, but also for the corporation.
So good. One of the things that I love about diversity groups like ERGs and all the things, there's so many names you can name them, but I love the fact that a lot of them promote the role of mentorship and allyship. So Talana, for you, can you discuss the role of mentorship? You've mentioned it a couple times, so I think it's a thing that you enjoy. So can you discuss the role of mentorship and allyship in advocating for recognition of those undervalued efforts, or especially in industries like tech or wherever, automotive? Any thoughts there?
I think mentors are important. I think they're important to learn about organizations, having mentors inside your function, outside your function, but they're critical, I think, within your function because they can help you navigate whatever is going on professionally, personally, but they're not the same as sponsorship. So I am a mentor this year, and I have 3 proteges, and we share. They share with me as well as I share with them. And I think together, collectively, we all grow. But sponsorship is where the real magic happens. And as they say, you don't choose a sponsor chooses you, but you have to be seen. So we need to make ourselves available.
There you go. Can you give some definition to sponsorship? I think some folks this may be a new term for them. Can you give some definition to that for us?
Sponsorship is that person who knows you, who knows your work, and is willing to spend their collateral on you. They're willing to speak up for you at the table, in rooms that you're not in, and create new opportunities when they know what you want. They got to know what you want, though, to be effective. But I had an opportunity created for me, and I was like, huh? What? You want me to do what? And it was kind of like out of the blue. I didn't think I was ready, but they did. And it worked out. So, sometimes those sponsors may be in a position to get you in a position that stretches you, but you have to be ready and you have to say yes.
There you go. Give your yes. Got to be ready. Anything to add there, Jenna, just in regards to the role of mentorship and allyship in this space?
Yeah, I think I watched a talk at a tech conference one time early on in my career that has stayed with me since the moment I watched it. And in it, the speaker said that to be successful in a developer position, and I'm going to preface this by saying I don't think it's specific to developers, but to be successful, you need to have a mentor and you need to be a mentor. And I think that we definitely we solidify our own knowledge by mentoring someone else. By being mentored, we understand how our efforts impact our own career trajectories. So while mentorship in and of itself may not make invisible work visible, as far as the entire organization, a mentor can help you realize where maybe you're spending a lot of your wheels and not getting as much ROI on those efforts as you should.
Wow, that's major. That's so major. I think what you just said really makes you really think through the value of mentorship. And it can only go as far as you'll talk about it. And so I think it's important that you just pointed that you got to talk about the things that you're doing so they can hear it and maybe even give you feedback to help make that even more impactful. So I guess I'll end it with this final question from your perspective. I'll go ahead and start off with you, Talana. From your perspective, what steps can organizations take to create a more inclusive and equitable workplace culture that values all forms of labor? Just your opinion. What steps can be taken to really look at that? How can we create more?
I think we have to be looking and we have to be intentional. We have to understand our workforce. We have to understand their needs and meet them when they are. Everyone's not in the same place for a multitude of reasons, but understanding who they are as individuals, what their contribution is to the organization, and how you can help them come in, invite them in, because we have so many new people that'll come. And this happened to me when I came to Michigan from Tennessee. I was used to, hello, knowing everybody. I knew everybody in the plant. It was wonderful. And I got here and I didn't know anybody. The culture's a little different. They don't speak unless they're spoken to. And it was an adjustment for me. It took me a while to, figure it out. But I think inviting folks in to the circle and allowing them to be a part of your journey is a way that we can be more intentional. And that said, the individual contributor, leadership, executive leadership, meeting the people where they are and really understanding where they are, what they need, and what keeps them contributing to the organization.
So good. Jenna, love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that the first thing that an organization can do to look at the expectations of leaders across all levels. You need to ensure that the goals that are provided to leaders not only incorporate their efforts that contribute towards company revenue growth, but also efforts at cultivating their teams. And I think the first step to do this is ensuring that everyone that is either hired into a leadership role or promoted into a leadership role receives adequate training. And don't sit them in front of a computer and watch very old, dated videos. Engage in role play scenarios, require that they attend different ERG meetings, and also invest in, leadership tools and resources. If we want all of the leaders across an entire organization to collaboratively bear the responsibility of belonging, then we have to make sure that we're not making an assumption about the leaders that they have that innate ability to cultivate it. I think another thing that can be done to help and encourage leaders is to not just celebrate those financial outcomes, but also their human outcomes as well. Did one leader in your organization have 3 people promoted in the last year? That's an effort that should be celebrated. And I think finally, one thing that is important to keep in mind is that you have to understand that workload and the inequitable workload, it rolls downhill. So if your executive leaders are stretched thin, if their calendars are the stuff that nightmares are made of, then know that type of being stretched thin, it is going to roll down even to the individual contributor level. And at the individual contributor level, if your leadership is that stretched thin, it is much more likely that you're going to have invisible labor. So just making sure that your leaders are prepared and are on the lookout for invisible labor, and not just assuming that because somebody did the individual contributor role really well, that makes them a great leader. There's additional steps that you need to take to preserve that culture of seeing all forms of labor.
So good. That's so informative. I think that as we wrap up this portion of our time here today, I think what you both have mentioned is just around opening up and having communication. It's important. And also just acknowledging that work. I recall a time, and I'll leave this here. I recall a time I was over a building. I managed a full school. And I remember there was an individual, I was just like, I don't know what she's doing. I remember getting so frustrated, and she missed a week of work. That week of work was crazy because I didn't realize how many things she did that I didn't notice. I remember going to my staff and saying, why is this not done? Every time they mentioned her, it was her. It was her. It was her. I never again thought about not acknowledging. I started asking, what y'all doing that I don't see? I started looking to your point, Talon. I started looking. And so I just want to encourage everyone here today to look. Open up your eyes and see, because somebody needs you to really just acknowledge them, because it's nothing better than knowing someone sees me. Tandra, I'll go ahead and pass it to you for Q&A.
Wow. But that statement would have been so good for us to end on. I just want to add one other thing to everything that you all have said. First of all, we do have a question or a few questions that I'm going to present. But just to add to what that story you just told, Erica, a mentor told me some time ago to document everything I do. We don't necessarily think about some of the little things that we do. Just to give an example, Saray and I work very closely. We both have strengths in certain areas and weaknesses in others. I'm going to publicly say data and spreadsheets, not my thing. Saray, it is like going to a concert of your favorite artist. When you say spreadsheet, she gets so excited. So I'm not going to spend hours trying to pull together something she can literally do in 15 minutes. Make sure you're documenting the things that you do, because what you think is, Tamara Gibson says no Excel. I feel the same way. Some of the things that you think are so easy and simple and shouldn't be documented take someone else hours. That employee who was out for a week, that absence was felt because that person does so much that they weren't documenting. We know that the job description is just a little bit of a roadmap for where we're going to go, and we're going to add so much to that. So make sure that you are documenting what the description of your job is, and make sure that others know. So I just wanted to add that. We have great questions here in the Q&A, so I am going to throw it out to any of you that want to join in and answer. So first, Khadija Hassan says, this information is invaluable. As an educational consultant, I am working with companies to become more equitable. However, my question is, how does one address pushback from the employee? As an employee, I have experienced feigned care and concern only to see employees moved out of jobs because they trusted the process. Ooh, I feel that. I also find the younger generation, based on my adult children's experience, are unsure what's appropriate to ask and the best way to go about pushing back against unfair practices and workloads. What do you do in these situations? I'm also going to add this question to our chat so that you all can see it and so that everyone else can see it as well, if you all want to ponder on that for a moment.
I think this is an amazing question. And I think, Tandra, something that you just said, I think ties very closely into this question. You mentioned that you had a mentor tell you to document everything you do. Well, sometimes when we are receiving pushback from leadership as an individual contributor, often it's because we know we've done this, but we don't know the details, right? Like often review cycles are on a yearly basis, right? You sleep 365 times, you forget all those little details of the things you've done. So one thing that I think about invisible labor that we haven't mentioned yet is that sometimes it's invisible to the individual themselves. So finding ways to make your labor visible to you, I think, is essential, and is one way that you can arm yourself for going into conversations where you do have to give pushback. In the world of software development, we use something called Kanban boards. Kanban is Japanese for a card that is visible. And there are tools like Trello, and it's a free tool that you can go out and you can create these Kanban boards. Think about 3 different lanes or columns that might say to do, in progress, done. And you make little cards for each task. You move them through the lanes. And the best part is at the end, it keeps track of all the things you've done in that completed lane. I use this religiously because at the end of a year, I want to have a lot of documentation and just information and data to go into and advocate for myself. And making your invisible labor, even those things that you say, oh, it's just going to take me 15 minutes to do, documenting that, making it visible to you, I think is one way you can go in and disarm conversations about maybe you're not, ready to move up a level, or, you're not fit for this other role you're applying for. You have a whole year's worth of documentation to support your position.
I'd like to, yes, and that, because I had a Kanban of Post-it notes when we were going through COVID. I had to work from home. I had a lot going on, and I needed to remember what was done and what wasn't. So, I'm moving them over. But the thing I've used now is my calendar. If I need to spend 15 minutes on a task, I'll put it in the calendar, because you do forget. but I can go back and I can reference that as a tool, especially when I was doing the weekly summary of this is what I accomplished this week. It helps you to remember, all the things that you've accomplished, because when we're in the moment with our leaders, we don't remember because there's so much you're trying to remember, what I got to do next week as opposed to what I did, last month. So anything that you can do to track what you're doing, I think makes a difference in moving forward. And with new employees, especially the Gen X, again, bringing them in. We think different, but they can teach us things and we can teach them things. But when they feel included, they'll give you their all. And they have so much energy. And we can actually help them to build skills because they're looking for things to do. So finding that match, find out what they're interested in and helping them as mentors and as peers, to move forward, I think is important.
Wow, I
go
think
ahead.
that is a great way for, I'm sorry, Erica.
No, I was going to say, I know we're at time, but the other part of the question was in regards to companies and the pushback. I think it's important to find the pain point. When you find the pain point and relate what they're looking to in regards to the area that you see that there's like this lack of understanding, find the pain point and relate it back. That makes it and brings it right to their front door, and it's around something that they're already trying to solve. So just something to think through when in regards to approach. Just want to share that. Sorry.
No problem. That is so good. I think that we actually could have gone into more discussion just based on those questions. So thank you, Khadija, for those questions. And thank you to each of you for your thoughtful insight. Soraya and I were kind of messaging each other behind the scenes. I think that we may be reaching out. Erica, we're always reaching out to you, but we may be reaching out to you, Talona and Jenna, and inviting you back for some of our other topics. I think this month we're focusing on the wonderful work that we do as women, but how about just focusing on the work that we do, right? And bringing you into some other conversations that we have as well. So I want to invite you all to join us next month for our next conversation, Embracing Diversity, Transforming Workplace Culture Through Inclusive Hiring Practices. I do hope that you all will join us there. If you missed any part of today's conversation, it will be on our YouTube channel probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks. We hope to see you next month, and we hope that you'll go back and take a look at those recordings. And then in the future, come back and see Jenna and or Talona and definitely Erica joining us again. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye, everyone.